Hello Year 2. It's time for our final story at Wigglesbottom Primary, and this story is called The Bewitched Violin. One day, Miss Riley asked us if there was anyone who would like to learn to play the violin, and we all put our hands up. But then Miss Riley introduced us to Miss Steen, and she was tall and wore really dark clothes, and she looked a bit spooky. Miss Steen said that if we wanted to learn to play the violin properly, we would have to work hard and practice every day. And that's when everyone put their hands down, because it didn't sound like that much fun anymore, and also because Miss Steen had a bit of a scary voice. But I kept my hand up because I really wanted to learn how to play a musical instrument. Miss Steen stared at me for ages, and then she said, "Come with me, Hannah." And that's when I realised that I was the only one with my hand up, and that I was going to be the only one in the whole class who was going to learn the violin with spooky Miss Steen. She was quite happy about that. I was just about to say that I didn't want to do it anymore, but then Anne-Marie Moore put her hand up and said, "I've changed my mind, I want to come." And then Bobby Henderson said, "Me too." Miss Steen nodded her head and said, "Very well, follow me." So we all followed Miss Steen along the corridor and down the stairs, and we actually had to run a bit to keep up with her because she was walking really quickly, and her long dark cardigan was floating behind her, and it looked a bit like a spooky cape. When we got to the bottom floor, Miss Steen opened a door that we didn't even know existed and disappeared inside. That's when Anne-Marie Moore said that she was 100% sure that the door hadn't been there this morning. And Bobby Henderson said that he wasn't going inside, and that the only reason he put his hands back up was because he wanted to get out of class for a while. But then we heard music coming from the room. So we peeked inside, and that's when we saw that it was full of old, dusty instruments and boxes and things covered with sheets, and that Miss Steen was playing the violin. We all watched and listened as Miss Steen played a really long and shaky note on the violin. And then she stood up and handed us each a violin case and showed us how to open the case and how to hold the violin properly and how to rub the little red rosin on the bow to make the bow work better. And then she said, "Okay, put your fingers here like this and try to play this note. Anne-Marie, you can go first." Anne-Marie pulled her bow across the violin strings, and it made a loud screeching sound, and it didn't sound anything like the nice sound Miss Steen had made. Then Miss Steen pointed her bow at me, and I tried to play the note, but it sounded even worse than Anne-Marie's had. So I said sorry to everyone because the sound had been so loud and so screechy that they'd all covered their ears, even Miss Steen. But Miss Steen said that there was no need to apologise, and that we were beginners, and that everyone sounded bad when they first started, and that it would take years for us to learn to play as well as she could. But just as Miss Steen was finishing her sentence, Bobby started playing the long note, and it sounded all shaky and professional, and it sounded even better than when Miss Steen had played it. Miss Steen's eyes went wide, and we all gasped because we had no idea Bobby could play the violin better than an actual violin teacher. Miss Dean asked Bobby how long he'd been playing the violin for, and he said, 1 minute. That's when Miss Dean got a really weird look on her face and said, lesson over, back to class. And then she ran out the door ahead of us and along the corridor. So we all went back to class and told everyone about Bobby being able to play the violin, even though he'd never even touched one before. Bobby said that he had no idea how he'd been able to play the violin, and that's when Anne-Marie Moore said that she knew exactly how, and that Bobby's violin was bewitched, and that Miss Dean was the one who had bewitched it because she was a bewitching witch. Anne-Marie said that she had suspected that Miss Dean was a witch, and that was why she changed her mind and put her hand back up, because she wanted to keep a close eye on her. Everyone gasped, and we knew that Anne-Marie was right, because we'd all seen Miss Dean's long black dress and cardigan cape. Then at lunchtime, Bobby said that he was feeling a bit weird and that his fingertips were tingling, and Anne-Marie gasped and said that that meant Miss Dean was close and that she was probably casting a spell on his fingers so that he could play the violin even better than before. Then all of a sudden Miss Dean appeared at our table and we all screamed because she had appeared out of thin air. Miss Dean stared at Bobby and then she said, "Come with me." Bobby got up and went with Miss Dean really quickly before we could do anything to stop him. As soon as they were gone, Anne-Marie said, "Mr. Harris, now." And then she ran. So we all ran after her because we knew that she was right and that we had to tell her teacher about Miss Dean being a bewitching witch before she flew away with Bobby and forced him to play the violin to her all day, every day in her faraway witchy castle. But then we got to Mr. Harris's office. Bobby and Miss Dean were there, and Bobby had his coat and bag on, even though it wasn't home time yet. And Miss Dean was staring at Mr. Harris, and he was nodding loads. That's when Anne-Marie shouted, "Stop bewitching Mr. Harris! Bobby's not going anywhere with you." Miss Dean got such a shock that she dropped her violin on the ground, and when she saw that it had broken, she did a loud witch scream. Anne-Marie shouted, "Cover your ears or you'll turn to stone." So we all covered our ears and screamed at the top of our lungs because we were terrified. Everyone was screaming and Mr. Harris had to blow his whistle to get us to stop. And when we stopped screaming, we saw that Miss Dean was sitting on the floor trying to fix her violin. Mr. Harris told us all to explain ourselves. So we did. We explained about Bobby and the violin and the staring and the tingling fingers and all the bewitching. And that's when Miss Dean stopped looking so upset and smiled a bit. And then she said that she wasn't a witch, but that she wished she was, because then she could use her powers to fix her violin. And when she said that, we all felt terrible. Miss Dean said that Bobby was so good at the violin because he was a natural and maybe even a musical genius, and that she'd just been telling Mr. Harris all about Bobby and his talent and how she was going to give Bobby lessons for free. And then Anne-Marie asked if Bobby was moving schools to go to a violin school now that he was a musical genius, and was that why he had his coat and bag on? But Bobby said no, and that he just had a dentist appointment. But then Bobby said that his fingers were tingling again, and Miss Dean asked to see them and said, "I think you've been pressing on the strings too hard." Rest them and they'll feel better in a few hours. I'll see you tomorrow before lunch for your lesson. And then she left. So we all made sure Bobby rested his fingers that day. And Anne-Marie even did all his writing for him in class. But then at home time, when we were walking out of the school, Anne-Marie gasped and said that she didn't remember seeing the secret door, and none of us could remember seeing it either. And we couldn't even go back in to check because our mums and dads were already waiting for us. And that's when Anne-Marie said, "You don't think Miss Dean maybe is a witch after all, do you?" And we all gasped. Ooh.